Hello and welcome to another edition of For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is the mayor of Ledyard, Connecticut, Mayor Michael Finkelstein, also a police officer in the town of Ledyard for many years, also a frequent visitor to my radio building, comes on a lot, so I had to have him on the TV. Mr. Mayor, welcome to the show.
Good morning, Sean. Thank you.
Ledyard, an interesting town, lots of history to it, and lots of exciting things that are on the horizon for Ledyard. But before we get to that, let's talk about you. And go back in time maybe to your humble beginnings, I guess starting before you even became a police officer.
Actually, I was born in Ledyard, but then my family moved to Clinton. I grew up in Clinton. I was a freshman in high school, moved back to Ledyard, ended up graduating from high school in Ledyard, went off to college, was a criminal justice major, so at some point I decided, I don't know how I switched, but I wanted to be a doctor, and then that switched to a police officer. So that's for a different show, I think.
Yeah.
But when I was in college as a criminal justice major, told, hey, take every entry test you can. Fortunately for me, the first test I took was for Ledyard. They were hiring 5 people. I was fortunate enough to be chosen and picked as one of those 5. So made a very good decision, I think, now in hindsight, to start my career back in 1989. Became a police officer in Ledyard, and actually a year ago, this past February, retired after almost 26 years.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And you have to think, most of your life was in Ledyard, and the first test you take was for Ledyard police, and you got it. It's almost like destiny was there. You were meant to be in Ledyard, right?
Hopefully that's the case. Yeah.
Now, do you have to? You were going to college for criminal justice anyway. Do you have to take a certain amount of those classes to even be a police officer in the first place?
No, a lot of departments are different, and back in 1989. I will say that not many people in law enforcement, or not the majority, did not have a degree. So when you were going to the entry process, you weren't really going up against people who had college degrees, which is vastly different now. In today's day and age, it's very difficult to get into police work unless you've been in the military and have that background to go to law enforcement without a college degree. I was fortunate that I was able to, I say out of probably 21 of my 26 years going back to school part-time, right, to end up getting my 3 degrees, but it's well worth it in the end, but it took a little while.
Well, you were hired right away, so it must have been very opportune for you. They needed police officers, I guess, at that point,
yeah,
right?
It was a huge undertaking for Ledyard. They had, at that point, 10 officers. They made the decision to go up to 15. Again, that was 1989. Things were vastly different back then, pre-casino, pre-bingo. Really very much a sleepy rural town at that point,
right.
And it was a big change to go from 10 to 15, and now it's up to 21. Not much has changed that way, except for some of the structure.
The kids that are coming up now, if they are expressing interest in law enforcement, would you recommend it? Would you, at the very least, give them some advice about some misconceptions that they might think it might be very different than what they're thinking they're going into?
I absolutely would recommend it. I think it's a very noble and a very good career to have. I think there's a lot you can do for your community. And I do teach now at the college level, and I love that because I'm able to work with a lot of people that are, between high school and moving on to say, hey, what do I want to do, and do I want law enforcement? And really kind of instilling in them why you should be a law enforcement officer, because I think there's some people that unfortunately go into it for the wrong reasons. It's not about power, it's about helping the community and doing things that can better everyone's lives. And I think the vast majority of people who go into law enforcement want to do that. And I think that's a huge piece for people that want to go in, to make sure they're doing it for the right reasons, that they really want to go into law enforcement to help people, to be part of their community. And I think that's an enormous piece.
My little dabble into law enforcement, if you will, the closest I ever got to it was being a loss prevention and security guy at a retail store. So I would catch people shoplifting. But then, I was not meant to be, like you or anything like that.
You have a great career.
Never got to, have a baton or anything like that to take them down or anything. But good time. So since I have you here and you are a former police officer, or it'll always be in your blood, I have to ask you about certain current events that are going on these days. Like, for example, the heroin epidemic. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it is something that I think, I'm still heavily involved in. But we're taking it really at a 360-degree angle. Enforcement's a huge piece of it. You have to get the people off the street that are dealing. That's, that is a piece that you have to do. But at the same time, you really have to get to the crux of why people have the addiction. And I think we finally have a society that is really starting to recognize that the opiate addiction, the opiate heroin crisis, it was really a crisis. It took a long time for, I think, a lot of people, especially the government level, to say, this is a problem. A lot of people kind of pushed it to the side.
Did they just not want to accept that it was a problem?
I think there's a lot of reasons, and I think some of it was sometimes when you recognize there's a problem, well, that means you have to come to, you have to do steps towards a solution. And the good thing about us being where we are now is everybody is recognizing, yes, this is a problem.
Even in I don't want to call Ledyard a sleepy town anymore because it certainly isn't, but is it an issue in your town, just like Norwich, New London, other
Absolutely.
places?
It is a societal problem. It doesn't matter where it is. Sometimes the sales may take place heavier inside of a more urban area, but it still is a problem that is regional, and we're attacking this from a regional standpoint. But the reason people are getting addicted, I think, this is not the heroin epidemic of the 70s where people were addicted and tried heroin for vastly different reasons. We're experiencing a lot of people that are addicted to opiate pain medications, and that addiction now leads into a heroin addiction. How that happens is people get addicted. Their body has to have it. Well, right now, when you stop getting a prescription for whatever opiate, it may be oxycodone, OxyContin, once you stop getting that prescription, to get those pills out there on the black market is a whole lot more expensive than buying heroin. And that is a huge issue because we have to be able to address the need. Yes, you can get all the dealers off the street that you can find, but when people have this, it's a physical addiction, they need to feed that somehow, and they're going to find a way to do that, whether it's from dealer A, dealer B, dealer C. So it, again, has to be addressed from all different angles. And a huge piece of this is the treatment part.
The Narcan.
And I think, well, no, the treatment part, not just from Narcan, and that's emergency services, that's been a huge benefit to helping people with overdoses. But the treatment as far as after they're saved with Narcan or after they come to the conclusion they want help, being able to get into programs that are long-term enough to help them overcome addiction. And Sallow, for example, Shine a Light on Heroin, outstanding organization that brings a lot of things to the table. We just had this past Wednesday, we had a forum at Ledyard High School where we had a panel from Sallow come in, 2 former addicts, a mom of, unfortunately, who lost her son to addiction, as well as somebody who's in the treatment profession, to really hit home to the most vulnerable of our populations, which is our high school and middle school students, to say, this is a problem. This is where this addiction can lead. Because when we just did a study for our Ledyard Safe Teens this past year, a very concerning piece of that is how kids in middle school view pills as dangerous, or the danger of pills. And unfortunately, they don't view them as dangerous because we all know you go to the doctor gives you a prescription, you take a pill. And historically, when kids are brought up that way, they're seeing it as not really a dangerous thing.
If the doctor's giving it to you, it must be okay.
Exactly. But what that has morphed into in a lot of cases is that experimentation with pills. Kids that are taking pills recreationally because they're in the house, they're at a friend's house, and they start it that way. Or the ones who legitimately get it as a pain medication. They have a sport injury, they have a medical issue that causes them to have that. And recognizing how that addictive process takes place. So, I go back to the beginning of saying 360, it really is an all-encompassing event to try to help get our society out of this addictive cycle. Parents, kids, teachers, law enforcement, doctors, treatment professionals, everybody has to come to the table and be ready to say, this is a problem, we all need to address it.
Is your department, are they given Narcan to use out in the field? Or?
We currently, the police department of Ledyard does not carry it, our emergency services does. It's a little bit of a different setup where our fire departments are the R1, ambulances are the R1. So they're the ones responding. Police go also. It is something that we are exploring doing, but we certainly, from a response standpoint, are looking to be the most reactive as we can to help people in these crisis situations.
How much did you have to deal with that stuff when you were a police officer?
We had to deal with it a lot, and unfortunately, overdoses have happened for decades,
right.
And that has been an unfortunate part of addiction. A lot of times when we were seeing the overdoses were people that were coming out of treatment, coming out of prison, and at that point they were trying to go back to their pre-institution dose, and their body just couldn't handle it, and they were overdosing. So, that's a huge problem on that side. But on the police side of things, I can't give you a hard number, but I certainly would say that probably over 80% of the burglaries that we used to investigate generally were going to be drug or heroin related. because they were people that were addicts that were looking to get money for the next fix. They were going into the houses of relatives, stealing from their very closest relatives and items they knew were of value, or randomly going to different houses to try to steal stuff and pawn it. And we had a very large uptick back when copper and that scrap market was high. All the houses that were for foreclosure, virtually were stripped of all the copper because people that were addicts were going in, stealing it, going and scrapping it, and then going and get a fix. We were lucky, as every town was. We were able to get a lot of those cases resolved and a lot of confessions from people about their drug addiction. But that's where I was saying before, it's an enormous piece for the treatment, because we were able to get people to say, I have a problem, I'm stealing because I'm an addict, but then you get them into the court system, into the treatment system. When they don't have treatment programs that are long and effective enough, that was causing a problem. So I think right now we're at a better place in society where when people are recognizing this and this call and need for better treatment programs is really being heard by people, there's starting to be some resolutions to that problem.
It's amazing. If these are the stories that you're telling in your town, imagine what is going on in the more urban communities.
Yeah. Well, I think unfortunately the addiction issue is uniform.
Right.
People are getting addicted no matter where they are. What they're doing is when they're going to seek out drugs at some points, unfortunately, that tends to gravitate towards the urban centers. But as we enforce more and more, and as this community task force and statewide narcotics task force together work to try to eradicate some of the dealers, that really does spread out a little bit. And that's the key part to everybody working together and regionally, is being able to stay on top of that. Because if a dealer is in city A, well, it doesn't mean they're not going to go to city or town B, because we have to be ready for that. And working, it's amazing work that our community enhancement task force is doing right now, is being able to work and pay attention to that and know who's going where to where, who are the dealers, and really cracking down on that.
Good opportunity to take a break here. People want to learn more about Ledyard. Is there like a website for them to go to?
Absolutely. And just Town of Ledyard website is very easy. It's ledyardct.org. Very easy website to navigate. We also have a pretty heavy social media presence between our Town of Ledyard, Ledyard News. I have Mayor Mike's page there also. But the police department is very active, Parks and Rec, et cetera. So there's a lot of good stuff out there on social media and on our website.
All right. We'll take a short break and come right back. I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Stay right there. Welcome back to For the Record. I'm Sean Murphy. My guest today is the mayor of Ledyard, Connecticut, Mayor Michael Finkelstein, also a police officer, law enforcement officer for 26 years.
Yes, sir.
Woo,
Yep.
Long time. So we went to the break talking about heroin issues and police department in general. I'll ask you a question about the police department. Does it work for you in the sense that I've noticed, I believe it's Montville, they just recently did a thing on whether they wanted to move away from the resident state trooper model as opposed to a police department. What's the differences? Are there pros and cons? Obviously, there's a budget difference between the two, right?
And I think Ledyard just went to an independent department actually this past January. We had for decades prepared our town and our department to move in that direction. And what you're seeing now is a police department that is more economically efficient and also operationally efficient. And I think it's a huge piece of why we're in a better place in Ledyard as an independent department. Historically, the resident trooper program was set up for small towns, didn't have police departments, wanted that trooper in town to have a presence. And it's a great program, but it was established in 1946, and unfortunately, it really didn't keep up with the needs of a lot of towns that were growing. You have towns, Waterford, South Windsor, Plainfield, all towns that used to be resident trooper towns that ultimately at some point said, we can no longer be in this program. I can't speak for Montville because their situation is vastly different than Ledyard's as far as the setup before that, but the resident trooper program unfortunately has priced itself out of existence in many towns. Right now, you're trending in having about a $200,000 budget for a single person inside of a police department. And that person doesn't have administrative control over the officers in that department. In many cases, the mayor or first selectman, by contract and by statute, is the chief of police. So it's really an older system that, again, some towns it works phenomenally in, and it's a very good program. Some towns have just outgrown it financially and operationally.
You would think it's a good thing if you've outgrown it. That means you're growing as a community, as a town, and you want your own police department at some point.
And I think one thing that we've learned in the last 2 months of in our change in system is the responsiveness that the police department is able to have, because you've completely streamlined the operational control. Inside the state police system, you have the resident trooper sergeant who reports to the lieutenant, to the captain, to the major, up the chain of command through lieutenant colonel. In an independent department, you have a mayor and you have a chief, and they make decisions based on what is the best interest of our community and what do we need to do for our town. And a lot of times it's a quicker decision, and it's a decision that's definitely in the best interest of that community.
Well, since we're on the topic of police departments, one big exciting thing that's going on in your town right now is the building of a brand new police department. I would say more visible in its new location, right next to the town hall. Right? Talk about that a little bit.
We the voters were very fortunate a couple of years ago to have a vote to construct this new police department. So that was approved. Construction has been phenomenal. I keep knocking on wood every time I say that, because we're about 5 weeks ahead of schedule. This winter has been tremendous in allowing us to continue construction.
If this was 1 year ago, forget it.
Right, when normally you wouldn't have been able to. But visitors to Ledyard Center are going to notice an enormous difference in the next couple months, not just with the police department erected next to the town hall, but also the streetscape project. You're going to see 117 in Ledyard. There's going to be trees lining the road. There'll be light posts up.
Oh, that's great.
It is going to be more of a New England center.
Because when you leave Groton, you kind of go into, once 117 turns into Ledyard, there is a lot of very rural, non-lit areas there.
But the downtown area, from Valentino's restaurant all the way to where your radio station is, that is going to look vastly different. There'll be parallel parking, you have trees, you have light posts. A lot of focus is being put on Ledyard Center to say that this is a downtown New England. So we're working hard. The Ledyard Center School, which in about 4 years from now will not be occupied due to another project where we're consolidating some schools. So decisions will have to be made with that school, what the future of that is. Everything looking up, though, looking forward to having some development possibly in Ledyard Center, economically and structurally. And the police department is really a hub and key to that, because it's going to be a very attractive building. It's going to make a campus for town hall, which I think will make the town really look a whole lot better, and also provide some upgrades to that campus that has been there since the 50s, really with little work done to it.
How'd you get that tower up? That's I know every police department has to have it, but it's monstrous. I saw the cranes there and everything.
It's funny. I think it's a little deceptive. It's 125 foot.
Okay.
It looks vastly different.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting is we had a 100-foot tower at the old ambulance building, which was about 200 feet back, and that was up for years. No one really noticed it. Now you move this up to the roadway and back of the building. It's obviously much more obvious, but it's part of a communications package that's needed for the police department. We're upgrading to some microwave technology. Currently we use phone lines, and we all know phone lines are costly, but they're also very dependent on
distance.
Well, outages too.
Yeah.
Weather, car accidents could really take out your infrastructure for radio communications, which is not something that you can have, and you need the resiliency. So microwave communications, which will be up very shortly, in Ledyard, will certainly improve our ability to communicate and to communicate during, disasters or accidents.
It is a community, especially that area, Ledyard Center. There's a holiday parade every year. It's short in its distance, but it's so well participated in, and also people knowing about it and wanting to be out there for it. It's a big deal. Plus farmer markets. I think you have one in the summer and one in the winter. Things like that.
Yep. Ledyard is a community. I've said that when I was running for mayor, when I was put into office. I really want to stress that Ledyard is a community, and it's a great community. We have the Memorial Day Parade, which is very well attended. We have the Light Parade around Christmas time, which has turned into an outstanding event. It's a very short event, but we have the Christmas tree lighting, we have carols singing. It's a very, very good time. And also the Ledyard 5K, which is its third year this year, will be in May. It used to be in March the last 2 years. They pushed it back to May 14th this year. But again, a great event to bring people together in town. You mentioned the farmers market. The farmers market, which takes place at Ledyard Center School, has been outstanding. This past year, we were also fortunate to have a winter inside farmers market at the old Gales Ferry School, which has been extremely well attended.
You know, people might not realize the connection, Gales Ferry and Ledyard. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, you know, Gales Ferry is a portion of Ledyard, and it's, you know, I live in Gales Ferry, and it's funny if you talk to some people.
It's a different town.
If you talk to some people in the, you know, historic district of Gales Ferry, they believe that that is the center of Ledyard, which, you know, we always kind of joke about. But you know, it is a very, very important part of Ledyard. The Route 12 corridor, part of the subbase, or really half the subbase, is in Gales Ferry. A lot of the historic portions of Ledyard, the Yale Boathouse, the Harvard Boathouse, the regatta that takes place in the river, Fort Decatur, which has a very big connection to the War of 1812 in Gales Ferry. So there's a lot of, you know, a lot of strong pieces to our community are in Gales Ferry, but really, you know, that's the western part of Ledyard.
It's the other side of the tracks, you know, as they say. Now, you've been in Ledyard most of your life, so you probably remember a Ledyard that didn't have a casino, a major casino like Foxwoods.
Exactly. You know, growing up in high school, I remember going on a summer trip and walking on Route 2 to pick up cans and bottles before there was a casino, a bingo hall.
Right.
Bingo hall opened in 1986, very successful, and you know, they have done a tremendous job of creating what they've created up there with the Foxwoods Resort. And
what's your town's relationship with the casino?
you know, we have a very good, very strong relationship with the tribe. I know there were some, you know, difficult and tumultuous times, but you know, moving forward to today, myself and Chairman Butler have a very good relationship. Everything is very positive between the tribe and the town, and I'm very hopeful that that continues.
Now, when you were in college, you took some criminal justice classes, so you knew at that point that you might be getting into law enforcement. Fast forward through your law enforcement career, did you have any inkling in your mind that you might want to get involved in politics?
No. A year ago today, as I was retired and sitting around in the snow.
Is this the anniversary of retirement?
No,
okay.
It was actually February 1st.
All right.
But you know, thinking back to last March, never would have imagined it, never would have thought it. You know, didn't really know what I was going to do other than, you know, teaching part time and some other, you know.
You teach at Three Rivers?
Okay. Teach forensic science.
Okay, nice.
But you know, the opportunity came about. I was asked by members of both parties to consider running. I took a good hard look at it, talked to a lot of people, and decided that, you know, it would be a good thing for me to run, to you know, be in the position of Ledyard that I'm in.
Now, apparently, your reputation precedes you because you decided you wanted to be mayor, and nobody would run against you. And they said, "Oh, Michael Finkelstein is okay. We'll forget it then." Or they the job was like, "Mayor, you can have it. Go ahead," and nobody ran against you.
I think the second part, and that's what I keep thinking. Like, you know, what didn't I get about that you know, no one wanted to run? But again, you know, I look at this is my first foray into anything that's political, and I, you know, hopefully in my first couple months have not done anything that's been political. I view this as a job to
community, right?
Well, a job to run the town and be the head of the community the best I can, and not do things on a political basis, but do things on what is right and what is wrong. And you know, that really is my mindset, that regardless of what political party you are, what, you know, inkling you have to lean, my job as the mayor is to do what's right for the town of Ledyard, and to do what's right for our employees and our citizens, to make sure we have the best possible community.
You know, you almost don't consider yourself a politician, do you?
Not yet.
You're
no.
sort of like the town manager, so to speak.
You know, I've said something close to that,
Yeah.
but you know, that's how I view it. Of, you know, as apolitical as possible. And certainly, I understand there's place for politics, but you know, when you're actually, to me, running something, and you have to look out for the best interest of everybody, you're doing it for everybody. You're not doing it for just one side or the other. As
you watch TV and you see all the big boys playing out their stupid stuff, you know, in this campaign, what do you think about all that?
It's difficult, and you know, and Lee and I talk about this. I have a hard time, you know, relating to really any candidate 100%. I look at everyone and say, there's flaws. There's, you know, in everybody. They aren't the candidates, and the way they go about things, you know, to me, isn't in the best interest of the country. And I think we're seeing that more and more as things get tighter, of doing things that are not even in the best interest of the company, or not our country, but not even political. You know, you're talking about tabloid type things in a national election.
Yeah.
And I think that's unfortunate, because you know, there's a lot of serious issues. There's serious things happening in the world. You know, in the midst of Belgium and some of the terrorist attacks there, you know, we're talking about wives and tabloid issues, and you know, I think that's unfortunate.
I know you love being the mayor. You love your town. Depending on how things go for you, do you think you might have any aspirations to continue on a little bit. I don't want to use the word politics because that might be a bad word with you. But anything beyond mayor possible?
Haven't really thought it out.
Will you run for president? Oh, well, we'll wait on that one.
No.
Yeah.
In my mind, I haven't thought out much more past this year. This is a 4-year commitment. Ledyard is one of the rare small towns that has a strong mayor that's a 4-year system. So I'm in it for the long term.
You could be so beloved as mayor that no one will oppose you in the next election.
We'll see.
Right?
It's far premature, and it's funny when I look back at the history of the mayors in Ledyard. I'm only the 9th because they just started in '71 having the mayor system. But so many didn't go for a second term, and I'm waiting to see what are the reasons that happens. And,
You're going to find
and
out
why is
one
that?
way or the other.
We'll family options at that point and see what's going on and where everybody is, and I'll make a decision. Obviously, much closer to that time.
Things are looking up for Ledyard, aren't they?
I think they are. It's tough times economically for everybody in the state and the country, but certainly Ledyard, is always looking forward and always looking for good things, and we're working hard.
If you haven't visited Ledyard yet, you should do so. One more time on the website for people to learn more.
It's ledyardct.org is the Ledyard website, and again on Facebook we have multiple sites that are Ledyard, Ledyard town departments and also Ledyard related. So there's a lot of things you can find on
Ledyard Police Department, and I think Ledyard Animal Control, do a lot with social media.
There's Ledyard Animal Control, Ledyard Chain, Ledyard Police, Ledyard Parks and Rec. A lot of information is passed out. We try to communicate the best we can.
Mayor Michael Finkelstein, Ledyard mayor, and hopefully for a long time. Pleasure having you on the show today.
Thank you, Sean.
You can see this show and many others on our YouTube site. Till next time, I'm Sean Murphy. This is For the Record. Take care.